This represents Japan before the Second World War. Just look at how massive the Japanese Empire was at that time. China, Korea, the Philippines, New Guinea, and Burma were all these countries under Japanese control, and this one signifies after World War II. Japan had to surrender for just a single mistake in the Second World War. After the nuclear attack by the USA, Japan's terrible moment started when 2 Japanese cities were bombed and almost 200,000 people died. At last, Japan was forced to surrender without any conditions, but the matter doesn't end here. Japan's economy was completely broken at that time. Starting from a shortage of food to unemployment, everything, including factories and hospitals, was destroyed. Japan was not able to come back anyway. And even they couldn't rebuild their military because of the pressure from the Western countries. No one ever thought that Japan could progress again. American economist Milton Friedman once said, "If you want to develop a country faster, then you have to bomb that country." And Japan is an excellent example of this statement, because after that nuclear attack in 1945, Japan did something great within a few years, which made it the world's 3rd largest economy. Even Japan is still in the 3rd position on the world's richest country list, with an economy of $4.9 trillion. Now the question is, how did this happen, and how did they turn around? You will be surprised to know that the USA itself once wanted to destroy Japan, but they helped the country to rebuild again. But why did they help a country like Japan? The country that attacked Pearl Harbor. What was the USA's actual interest? And the most important thing is, why didn't Japan seek revenge for the nuclear attack? Today, I'm going to tell you the fascinating history of how Japan became one of the world's largest economic countries, so stay with us till the end of the video. After the atomic bombings in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan realized that certainly they were going to be defeated in this war. That's why Japan surrendered to the Allied powers, including the United States, Britain, and the Soviet Union, on the 15th of August 1945. As a result, America took the control of Japan. During these 6 years of war, nearly 3 million Japanese lost their lives, and approximately $56 billion worth of wealth was destroyed. Meanwhile, the ordinary people of Japan were in a great disaster. Indeed, major cities like Hiroshima and Nagasaki were destroyed, and Tokyo, along with other cities, also faced very difficult conditions. At that time, the common people in Japan had neither jobs nor food. As a result, Japan was almost becoming a lifeless nation. When a country or state is defeated in a war, no one thinks about the common people or the economy of the state. Even the Allied countries like the USA didn't think much about Japan. Their main purpose was to do something with Japan in such a way that Japan would never engage in war again. They intended to make Japan completely weak. After losing the First World War, Germany was burdened with a lot of debt. Even Germany was humiliated all over the world, which led them to initiate the Second World War for revenge. The Allied powers were quite concerned about preventing a similar thing with Japan. Therefore, General Douglas MacArthur had full authority over Japan's surrender and their future. An international tribunal was initially established under Douglas's guidance to prosecute all of the war criminals. Nearly 6 Japanese leaders, including then Prime Minister Hideki Tojo, were executed. Japan's monarchy was abolished and democracy was placed, allowing Japanese people to choose their preferred leaders to rule the country. Even a new constitution was written for Japan. It stated in Article 9 of this constitution that Japan will never form any military forces to engage in war. In addition, all of Japan's weapons production factories were shut down, and during the war, all individuals in high positions were stripped from their posts. This was a part of Japan's surrender process. At that time, Japan's economy had completely broken. The country's exports decreased to almost zero. From 1945 to 1950, Japan's GDP was only $10 billion, and its growth was consistently decreasing each year. However, neither the United States nor other Allied countries were concerned about Japan's economy. They had left Japan in that dire situation. When everyone gave up their hope for Japan, just then, the United States started to stabilize Japan's economy again. On the other hand, the Cold War also began alongside the start of World War II. Russia wanted to spread communism globally, while America intended to promote capitalism and democracy. After World War II, the USA noticed that the Soviet Union gradually tried to spread communism in Asia and the Pacific region. Meanwhile, communist rule under Mao Zedong had begun in China, and communist ideology was rising in Korea as well. The USA could understand that if this continued, they wouldn't have any influence in the Pacific region. So the United States was looking for a strong ally in the Pacific region, and at that time, they focused on Japan. They wanted to develop Japan in such a way that it could be an excellent example of democracy. As a result, it created an obstacle to the expansion of communism that was spreading in the Pacific region. From 1949 to 1953, Japan's industry grew so much in these 4 years as if Japan was in 1937 before the war. During this time, Japan's employment started growing, and the citizens' lives gradually improved. Now, let's take a look at how the USA helped Japan. Before World War II, a significant portion of Japan's economy came from agriculture, so they had to focus more on farming to stabilize the economy, because a majority of Japan's workforce was centered around agricultural activities. But there was a problem to improve the farming. At that time, Japan followed a system where rich landlords lived in the cities, and they leased out their lands to the poor farmers. As a result, the farmers couldn't cultivate the land as they wished, which limited their crop production. When America wanted to remake Japan's economy better, they made some important changes. First, they passed a land reform law. According to the law, the farmers could buy the lands they worked on instead of just renting it. The farmers now started to cultivate the land as they wished. In addition, the government financially assisted the farmers and introduced American technology to their farming. Because of all these changes, Japan's agricultural sector began to grow rapidly in just a few years. But just relying on agriculture was not enough to develop Japan. They also needed industry. However, there was a problem too. Many of the Japanese factories were damaged during the war. Because the Allied forces bombed these industrial areas, that's why Japan's military couldn't get supplies during the war. Those factories were controlled by wealthy individuals called zaibatsu. At that time, the zaibatsu used to control everything from politics to the economy in Japan. Then the governments of the United States and Japan worked together to abolish this zaibatsu system. During this period, the United States provided Japan with about $2.2 billion in economic aid to help the country rebuild its industry. Besides, they also introduced American technology. After the war, as many factories were destroyed, it was easy to implement new technology in Japan's industry. They also needed a market to sell the products they made. But at that time, Japan's economy was too weak. So the United States opened its market for them. Japanese products gradually started being sold in America. This way, Japan's exports kept growing over time. Japan's then Prime Minister was Shigeru Yoshida. He implemented the Yoshida Doctrine to make a good relationship between Japan and the USA. This doctrine provided full protection from the USA. That means, if Japan were attacked, it would be considered an attack on the United States. As a result, Japan focused on improving its economy instead of building a military. On the other hand, due to the close cooperation with the United States, Shigeru Yoshida established a special ministry named MITI, which stands for the Ministry of International Trade and Industry. This ministry provided incentives for industries to focus on exports and arranged for low-interest loans from banks. So they started investing more in industries. The workers of those industries needed advanced training to compete globally. Therefore, Japan emphasized engineering in its education system to increase the number of skilled workers in the country. These workers were provided a lifetime employment guarantee, ensuring job security to help the industry grow. In addition, an incentive system was introduced where workers not only paid a salary but also received more for working harder. It encouraged the workers to work more hours. In this way, the industry continued to grow through the loyal employees. Seeing Japan's growth, you might think that any country could do the same. So, what's the difference in the case of Japan? Now, let me tell you about the time when America aimed to make Japan an economic superpower. During this period, the Korean War happened between 1950 and 1953. In this war, the United Nations forces chose Japan as their base. Japan's industries used to supply all the resources to the American troops during wartime. This brought a significant boost to Japan's economy. The Japanese government used the opportunity to improve the quality of the products manufactured in their country. You might have noticed that your parents, or grandparents, have a strong belief in various Japanese technologies like radios, televisions, flashlights, and more. Because Japan consistently maintains the product's quality, which instills trust among the consumers. Since 1950, Japan has become globally renowned for various products such as steel, shipbuilding, cameras, televisions, radios, motorcycles, textiles, and more. Japanese technology became so reliable that their annual GDP growth was more than 9% from 1953 to 1965. Even during this time, Japan's unemployment rate was only 3% and the inflation rate was the same. However, even with the growth in exports, the Japanese domestic market was not expanding much because the people didn't have enough money to spend. So the government launched a scheme in 1960 named income doubling to double the annual income of Japanese citizens. This scheme was highly successful, and the domestic market started expanding a lot as people had more money to spend. Imagine Japan as a place with not much land for farming, so relying on industries was the only way to solve the unemployment problem in Japan. By 1965, 41% of the Japanese workforce was employed in the industries, while only 21% were in farming. After the war, millions of soldiers were also engaged in various factories. Let me explain how amazing Japan's growth was at that time. In 1950, Japan's economy was only $13 billion. But in 1970, its economy grew to $213 billion within just 20 years, making Japan the fourth richest country in the world. In the next 25 years, Japan's economy skyrocketed to $5.5 trillion from 1970 to 1995, making it the world's second richest country after the United States. This remarkable transformation of Japan is called an economic miracle. Japan started their new journey like a phoenix rising from the ashes. However, did Japan progress much with just America's help? Not at all. Japanese citizens were so disciplined from the very beginning. Their hard work and self-confidence played an important role in Japan's development. But do you know why and how Japan attacked Pearl Harbor during World War II? If you want a dedicated video on this topic, let me know in the comment box.